Hello fellow YouTubers, today's Saturday, September 8, and from early afternoon and even up to now we've had some storms. It's been a very stormy afternoon, and we had a little bit of heavy rain, and it was bordering on hail, and I got some footage that you can have a look at. You see these four thumbnails here, the Google thumbnails. I lost them all of a sudden. 2 or 3 days ago they just went. And about 15 minutes ago they just miraculously came back again. And the change in temperature was quite dramatic, as you can see from this piece of footage. Well, that dropped the temperature quick, smart. That's down to looks like 18 degrees. It was 27 about an hour ago. A drop of 9 degrees. I'd say it dropped pretty quick in the last 15 minutes because it got very, very cool. Bordering on cold. And I have decided that I am going to, in some future uploads, I'm going to shoot some books. Well, to begin with, these are 22 shorts. CCI 22 shorts, 29 grains, 1045 feet per second, or so the manufacturer states. But anyhow, I'm going to put those 4 books up and I'm going to shoot them. So that's something you can look forward to. I'm looking forward to doing it. I am. I'll probably get in trouble from my dearly beloved. She'll say, "What are you doing? What are you doing out there?" I say, "I'm just shooting some books." Actually, it's quite warm. I put my cardigan on. Actually, my dearly beloved cardigan had a wash today, and it dried pretty quick before the storms came. Everything on the line was dry, thank goodness. Well, a lot of folks enjoyed that reading about the bonfire. Well, I'm going to continue on with what my brother, his friend Hadley and myself got up to. And it's probably going to be quite a bit of a read, so I better get going while the going's good. Okie doke. But while all the fireworks had been let off within the force field of warmth generated by the bonfire, Richard Hadley and I had decided to distance ourselves when the time had come to launch our large skyrockets. For they were special. We had one each. A monster of a thing that cost 2 shillings and 6pence. A lot of money in those days for something that would be here 1 minute and all but gone in a fraction of that time. But what a time it would be. From tip to tail, it must have been all of 2 feet long. And when you held it, like it was with the 6penny bunger, you knew you were holding something that was beyond the ordinary. Attached to the business end of the launching guidance stick was a 2-stage setup. The first of which, the main stage, was about 4 inches long and 1.5 inches in diameter. And it housed the propulsion compound that launched and continued to provide all the thrust that was required to blast the rocket 200 or 300 feet into the sky. But that wasn't what was special about them. Nor was it the reason we had moved all the way, well away from the bonfire. But rather the plastic nose cone second stage that contained a plastic figurine wearing a parachute. Yes. When the rocket reached the end of its lofty ascent, the nose cone separated from the main stage, releasing the figurine and allowing it to drift slowly to Earth. And we didn't want to run the risk of losing it to the flames. Oh no. No. We didn't want to do that. Didn't want to run the risk of losing them at all. But we did. 2 of them. Hadley's and mine. And it was all because of something we hadn't thought about at all. The wind. Oh, there wasn't any wind at ground level. Oh no. Wasn't even a breeze. Just the cold night air, the dewy wet grass, and the constant stream of vapour from our exhalations. But it was obviously a very different story way, way, way up in the stratosphere, the ionosphere, or whatever sphere you want to call it. Oh yes, bloody well yes. Must have been blowing a gale for Hadley and me. But not for Richard. No. Richard got a break when Aeolus took a break. Talk about the gods smiling on you. It would have been different if he had launched first, but as it turned out, I volunteered to be first cab off the rank. And the only reason I decided to do so was because Hadley and he were bickering, albeit lightheartedly, as we made our way about who should go first. You can go first, Hadley had said. No, that's all right, you can, Richard replied. No, you. You. No, you. You can. God. Anyhow, I placed the empty soft drink bottle on the ground. 1 of 6 Mr. Quarterman had brought along with him for just that purpose. He wanted it back. But of course he would. But I'll give credit where credit is due, because no one else did. As a matter of fact, he bought a few other things that no one else thought of either. A length of 3 by 2 sharpened at one end, which he hammered into the ground. A hammer and nails. Why? To fasten the Catherine wheels to. He was either smarter than a lot of people gave him credit for, or he had a particular liking for Catherine wheels. I know Wendy did. After I slotted my skyrocket into the bottle, I wasted no time in lighting the wick with a match. And for the first time that night, we were actually able to watch it burn. There wasn't any flame, just a thin line of red with a hint of blue. And because we could see it, we started to count down. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. There was a solitary white spark. We hesitated. A prelude. A false alarm. 5, 4. More white sparks. 3. A myriad of white sparks. Wait for it. Wait for it. The sparks abruptly ceased, replaced by a thumbnail of waving blue and white flame. Wait for it. Wait for it. The flame flickers, fades, waves a final goodbye, then is gone. We have ignition. All systems are internal now, Houston. 2, 1, blast off! In a matter of a second, a blink of an eye, the main stage erupted with a blinding flash of white flame. The sound like that of a fully pressurised blowtorch, charring the bottle and the grass below. Then, with a burst of awesome thrust that toppled the glass gantry, shot into the night sky with such incredible speed, it's a wonder we didn't break our necks as we flung our head backwards in order to track its course. What an absolutely spine-tingling, goose-bumpy, spectacular event it was. "Look at it go! Look at it go!" I said in a shrill voice of excitement. "Look at it go!" Like statues, we stood riveted to the spot. A roll of flesh, the only thing separating the base of our skulls from the top of our spines. Watching in wide-eyed fascination as the brilliant white orb shot to the zenith above our heads. I can see it now. For what seemed an eternity, we watched and waited. Watching and waiting as the telltale sign of the rocket's incredible climbing gradually diminished, getting smaller and smaller and smaller, higher and higher and higher, going, gone. Wait for it. Can you see it? Can you see it? Wait for it. There it is. We chorused, shooting an arm skywards and pointing with index fingers. It was there all right. A small dull crescent moon of white. So high that for a moment or two it seemed to be going nowhere. Hovering, as if hanging on an invisible skyhook and defying gravity. Wait for it. Then it started to drift, quickly. And as it drifted, it descended, drifting and dropping and moving away from us on a diagonal course directly southwest towards Landown Street. And beyond? And as it moved, we followed it with our eyes, always with our eyes. Standing our ground at first, then walking, and as we walk we can see the parachute proper. And there, suspended from the harness, looping the loop, twisting and turning, is the figurine. Then we're running. And as we're running, my mind is screaming, "No, don't do that! Come on, oh gee, give a kid a break, will ya? Come down! Stop! Please!" But it didn't stop. My silent pleading had failed to produce a miracle, to invoke divine intervention as I hoped it would do. And now, out of sheer desperation, I call for help of another kind. "Come on, you two," I yelled. "Let's beat it to the other side of the road and pepper it with stones." We did. But it was such a small target, we didn't stand a snowball's chance in hell of hitting it. And as it drifted over our heads and we turned and followed it, we knew all was lost. I guess it must have drifted 100 yards all up before the parachute was just at the correct descending height to catch and hang from the left rear corner of the brick chimney atop the roof of Solotov's house on the corner of Burnett and Lansdowne Streets. God damn it. Bummer, Georgie, Richard quipped. Likewise, Hadley piped in. Maybe it'll come down, drop down and slide into the gutter, Hadley continued. And maybe. There was nothing I or anyone else could do about it that night. But maybe tomorrow. Maybe. Mr. and Mrs. Solotov were a friendly retired couple who always greet us kids with a smile and a hello whenever the opportunity arose. And Mum did visit them on occasion for a cup of tea and a chat. So they probably wouldn't mind if Dad paid them a visit with his ladder. Probably wouldn't mind that at all. As we made our way back to the launch site, I was half expecting Richard and Hadley to postpone their respective launch. But they didn't. I guess they both thought, well, it is cracker night. And because it's cracker night, any other night just wouldn't be the same, would it? They were also probably thinking that because it happened to me, didn't mean it was going to happen to them. But just in case Hadley had a plan. He thought he'd be really smart and launch his rocket at an angle to offset the effect of the wind. And because he had decided to do so, he had to take his time making sure everything was just right. He began by fart-arsing about digging up the soil with the heels of his shoes to form a mound, like the football players used to do when preparing for kick-off. Then he frigged around, adding to and tamping down, placing the bottle and checking the incline, down on hands and knees to get a worm's eye view from either side, the front and from behind, fastidious, methodical, monotonous, and so aggravating. To the point that I was just about to blurt out, "Good God, oh bloody mighty, Hadley! Get on with it and launch the bloody thing for Christ's sake!" When he said, "There, done. I'm ready now." But that's just what Hadley was like at times. Such an irritating son of a bitch that I wanted to hit him. Hard. With a hammer. A lump of wood. Anything. Right between his jet black eyebrows. But it was only the bottle that was ready. And if you thought it wouldn't take long to place the rocket and light the wick, you'd be wrong. Dead wrong. He slotted the rocket into the bottle with such care and finesse, you would have thought it contained nitroglycerine. And when it came to lighting the wick, he fingered the matchbox so vigorously before he was satisfied with his grip. It sounded like he was playing a Spanish castanet. Such was the clicking of the matchsticks inside the box. Then he had to make sure that he was holding the match correctly, rolling it between thumb and forefinger of his right hand until, to his way of thinking anyhow, it was just right. Then he performed a couple of practice strikes. Then, finally, hallelujah, he struck the match and introduced the flame to the wick. The countdown begun, all for one and one for all. And it was a glorious launch, as equally spectacular as mine had been. And, just as he had planned, the rocket blasted into the night sky 20 degrees from the perpendicular on a northeast trajectory that, all things being equal, would put it over the piles of landfill well to our side of Bank Street when the parachute was jettisoned. And as before, we tracked its course, wide-eyed but without the need to crack our necks, watching the glowing tail gradually fade and become smaller, disappearing into the distance, going, gone. For 10, maybe 15 seconds we stood our ground watching and waiting. And when the parachute appeared, there was no doubt in my mind whatsoever that, had they expected, was so confident, was so sure of himself that he had got it so right, so spot on, that all he had to do to redeem his prize was reach up from where he was standing and pluck it out of the air. Yet for all his planning, for all the time he spent buggerising around, for all his idiosyncratic behaviour, there was one thing that shot it all down in flames. The wind changing direction. And it didn't hesitate as it moved away, drifting and descending high above the landfill in Jones's Park toward Bank Street. The figurine rotating 360, then bobbing up and down, around, up and down, moving away, away, and away. "No!" Hadley muttered. "Fit, fit." That was his puffer. Then he takes off, like the White Rabbit in Alice in Wonderland, who was late for a very important date. There 1 second and gone the next, running for all he is worth. And as he's running, he's yelling out what I was thinking only minutes before. Rich and I didn't bother tailing him, because even before he reached the first of the landfill, the parachute had drifted across Bank Street and wrapped itself around the power line. So close yet so untouchable. Bummer ads. Real bummer. Had this figurine remained suspended there for weeks, defying the elements and the barrage of sticks and stones, we and other kids bombarded it with him many a futile effort to set it free. It did come down, eventually, for one day it was gone. But how, or who became the benefactor, we didn't have a clue. Dad did carry his ladder to the Saltoff's house the very next day and checked the side guttering. But because the particular corner of the chimney was all but in line with the downpipe, he reckoned that's where it ended up, for it wasn't anywhere to be found. As for Richard, well, suffice to say that he was feeling pretty damn pleased with himself when we returned to the bonfire. Ah, yes. But while Hadley and I were a little peeved with our bad luck and Richard's good fortune, someone at the site was downright pissed off. And it didn't have anything to do with skyrockets. Seems while we were away, Mr. Sutton had been a naughty boy. And because Mr. Sutton had been behaving badly, Mrs. Sutton had let him have both barrels of her angst. And by the tone of Mum's voice, maybe she hadn't been the only one. "Keep an eye on Mr. Sutton," Mum said with a hint of venom. "He's been wandering about lobbing bungers at the feet of unsuspecting individuals. Scared the living daylights out of me and others too, I can tell you." "Okay, Mum," I replied, suppressing a laugh that ended up being a muffled chuckle. "It's not funny, Georgie," Mum shot back. "And he's sneaky." Hides a chrome-plated Zippo lighter in his hand. I didn't know what a Zippo lighter was, but it sounded like something really neat. And I liked the way the word came off my tongue and out of my mouth. A Zippo. Zippo. Like it was with Pez. As in Pez machine or dispenser. Zippo. Pez. Zippo. Pez. Yeah. They came out with a certain sound of authority. Some words are like that. "Lights those blasted thing of his with his back to you." "I know. I saw him. Watched him after he'd caught me unawares, bugger of a man." "We'll be careful, Mum." But we didn't have to. Mr. Sutton had obviously had his fun and was now trying to make amends with his wife, who, standing as she was with her arms folded across her chest and stone-faced, didn't want anything to do with him. Not impressed with him at all. But then I don't think Mrs. Sutton was impressed with her husband's behaviour most of the time. Good grief. And the night was coming to an end. The bonfire was dying. The Quartermans, the Jamesons and the Flanders had said their good nights. And by the way, Wendy was draped over Dad's shoulder, barely able to keep her eyes open. Her bedtime had long since passed. But even though there would be many more such nights in the years to come, I barely have any recollection of them at all. Just a few random jigsaw pieces of memory. Of the night one or more mindless aberrations set alight one of our bonfires a week or two before the event, and how we managed somehow to build it again. Of the idiot who lobbed a lighted penny bugger into my bag of fireworks that set off a chain reaction that all but obliterated the lot. And of Mr. Quarterman always being a reliable source of bits and pieces to get the ball rolling. I guess he just couldn't help himself. But that night, that wonderful first bonfire cracker night all those years ago, I remember as if it were only last night. Well, the night before that anyway. Family and friends, new experiences, a new word, fun and games, mostly. Simple things. Whew. Oh, that is quite a read. This will end up being a long video. Might go for 30 minutes, who knows. But that's okay. I'm sure you don't mind that at all. It's a good story, don't you think? Yes, fun and games. Zippo. I want to thank you for watching, and until next time, bye for now.